Hello, welcome to Refresh and Renew, the first in the 2021 Fall Faculty Workshop series from the George Fox Library. I'm so excited you decided to join us today. My name is Kate Weimer. I am one of the faculty research and instruction librarians. I'm based here at the Newburgh campus, and it is my pleasure to be taking you through some of our systems today. Hopefully some new things here to help your research go a little more efficiently, and maybe a few things that are just good reminders. So today's agenda includes the things on your screen. We'll talk a little bit about what a library even is in 2021. We'll look at our main tool, Primo. That's that big search box on our homepage. We'll look at how you find databases that are subject specific. We'll talk a little bit about how our systems affect your access on campus and off campus, how to share and save links for your own research or especially with your students. And then finally, chat just briefly about accessing materials or systems that are not a part of the local library collections. So let's jump in. So we get this question a lot here at the library. What even do you do anymore? Isn't everything online? Aren't libraries dead? We've all been hearing that one since we went to library school. And we're here to tell you that no, not everything's online. No, not everything is accessible, and certainly libraries are not dead. So when I'm trying to explain what a library is, I sometimes find it easier to approach that question from what is my identity as a scholar in the larger environment of academic inquiry. So there's I like to use a three-way breakdown for that. There are scholars who are really asking this question. I want to know something new. What is knowable? I'm going to uncover a new phenomenon. I'm going to uncover a new method. I'm going to discover a new species. I just want to know more than we currently do. There's another layer of academic inquiry that's about recording more knowledge. So we might already be aware vaguely that there is a phenomenon occurring. We might already be seeing a trend, but if I'm in this category, I'm more interested in expanding that record. Our traditional faculty tend to sit across these two categories, right? You're about discovering new phenomenon and then recording them and expanding that record. Librarians, on the other hand, tend to sit between recorded and organized approaches. So I am interested in recording more things about my field of information literacy and library sciences, but I'm also very interested in organizing what's already recorded by other scholars. The entire goal there being that when it's more organized, it's therefore more discoverable, and that might contribute to discovering new knowledge. So if I am doing interdisciplinary studies that's been enabled by a library system, it's been well organized, I was able to find everything I need, I might be able to uncover something new, or I might be able to record something new. And so that's really where libraries sit. We're about gathering that knowledge. We're about recording it, making sure that it's been written down to be found later. And then the step beyond that, making sure it is well organized and findable. And within that, we are actually still using a lot of the same systems that we've used for decades. They've been updated. A library record looks very different than it did even 10 years ago, and certainly more than 20 or 30 years ago. But the underpinning philosophy and the idea of what we collect and how we organize is still very much the same. So we're still very much interested in recording in a standardized way things like a title, an author or a creator, a description of that material, information about when it was created and when it was recorded. These are sort of standards across our field. And because they're standards, they're built into our online systems, and you as a researcher can learn to take advantage of that. You as a researcher also have to sort of know that that's there, because if you attempt to use a library system the way you use a search engine like DuckDuckGo or Google, that system's going to fight you a little bit. It's not going to be an efficient or, frankly, usually a pleasant experience. So we'll talk a little bit about some of that in this workshop today. And then, of course, we have things, right? We're about collections. So here at the George Fox Library, we have a significant collection of print volumes. We also have a significant collection and a growing collection of digital books and articles, videos, audio files, all sorts of things that are here that we have collected for your use. And then we've also further organized for you to be able to find. And at the end of the day, we like to think that the librarians are also part of that resource, whether that's our systems knowledge and our ability to find the things that we own, or our ability to help you think through the systems that exist and the things that are available to find what you need. All right, so let's actually jump into these systems. So if you have been to the library website, which is library.georgefox.edu, you'll be very familiar with what's on my screen here. This big white search box says search all material types in Primo. It's layered over a picture of our St. John's Bible. We're very proud of it. They're beautiful, beautiful books. But what even is this search box? And what would you use it for? So Primo, the official term for it is a discovery tool. It'll look a lot like an online library catalog, which a lot of us at this point are very familiar with, whether you had one in a school, if you had one in a former university, or if you use like a public library, has an online catalog. But Primo is not just an online catalog for GFU. We have our stuff in there, our local records for our print and digital materials. We also have records for the 39 libraries in the Alliance that we're a part of in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. Those are in Primo for you to discover because we can share those materials. It's a 1 to 3 day turnaround for those. We also have records for a lot of the contents of our databases. So we've got over 200 databases here. Primo is able to go in and scrape large swaths of that content and put the records for discovery into Primo results. So a basic search in Primo, if you just put keywords in that main white search box on our homepage, you're looking through a lot of stuff. And really, that's the idea. Again, that terminology, discovery tool. Primo is about discovery. So it's going to throw all sorts of stuff at you on the off chance that it might be useful for you. This is kind of in contrast to the way that we tend to search databases, which is much more targeted. We're thinking about filtering out things. We're doing, I want something specific and I'm going to find just that. Now that said, Primo is going to function. If you know how to search a database, if you know how those systems work, Primo does work that way. It will accept Boolean operators. It does string-based searching, and it searches in the same sorts of fields. But let's actually take a look at Primo, and that'll maybe make a little bit more sense. So if I were looking, for example, for the book Moral Choices in our collection, I could type just the title into the Primo search bar. In fact, this is usually if I get an email or a question from a student or someone else on campus, do we have this book, this material? Primo's the first place I look for it, and I typically do a basic title search. I can click search, and again, huge set of results. I've got over 1 million results in this set. It has thrown everything at me that where it could find moral and choices. Let's actually, here's the book that I'm looking for, Moral Choices by Scott B. Ray. Let's actually look at the record and talk about what Primo is searching for. Okay, so here at the top, I have sort of a quick view. Hey, here's what the cover looks like. Here's my title, my author, and then information on where it is located within our collection. In this case, it's a print book. It's on reserve, and it is currently checked in and available. Down below that is, again, a little bit more functional information. So you can text a call number to yourself if you'd like, and just take your phone up to our stacks to find something. You can get the system to form a citation. You've got a way to link back to this record. You can email it to yourself. I mean, there's all sorts of things we can do. What's more interesting and what I really want to look at today is the sections below. So this details section, this is the actual library record. This is the information we've collected on this book. So again, I've got a title field. You can see here, I've got an author field. I have a subjects field. If we're talking about print materials in our collection, that's going to be a Library of Congress subject heading. Cool thing about those, they are all linked. So if I said, oh, wow, this is really great. I want more books like this. I could do a search. I'm actually going to open this in a new tab, but I can click on that and it's going to run a subject search for me based on that subject heading. So that's that's an example of an older system that is now being made more powerful by being put into an online system. It's going to tell me a little bit, hey, the edition it's the 4th edition. It was published by Zondervan. And then this is a nice function for most of our materials. We do have a table of contents. This particular title does not have a summary attached, but we also sometimes see that. So that's usually like the summary that was on the inside flap or the back of the book. It's publisher provided. And then, of course, like my page number, my page count, and my ISBN numbers. What is useful about this is that all of these fields are searchable. So this came up, moral choices, because it found it here in the title field. If I had done a search instead, in fact, we can do that for this phrase, violence and gun control. I can come up here. Oh, come on. Oh, I can come up here and search. And again, that's going to get me a whole lot of other things. But if I do a little bit of zhuzhing to this, my second result in the set, and that's because, again, if I come down to my detailed section, it found moral choices here in the title, and then it found violence and gun control down here in the contents. That's the actual function of the search. So how do I take advantage of that if I'm a researcher? Well, for example, let's start back at the library homepage. I did moral choices as my search, but I could have actually added the full title. So moral choices, an introduction to ethics, and I always take out my semicolons when that happens. It sometimes confuses the system. And give it more words to search for. That can help filter down. So here I can see my books come up. That's an older edition of this book. Here's my Introduction to Ethics, still number 4. I could add the author to this, and again, it would start to generate better results, closer to what I'm actually looking for. An even more efficient way to do this, instead of doing the basic search, if I start the library homepage and I say, hey, let's do an advanced search instead. And okay, we can pop the title in, again, get rid of that semicolon, and tell it, I really only want print books. From the beginning, now I'm seeing here the 3 editions that are in our catalog for this book right up top. I could say I really want book reviews of this instead and change that to an article search. Oops, come down here. And now I'm finding article results, and they're all going to be book reviews. I can see in my results what kind of a record this is. It's telling me right here in gray on top of the title link. So these are all articles. If I go back and take a look at my print search, this is a print book all the way through. If I wanted to do a subject-based search, so I don't know the title of a work I'm actually looking for, I just want to find material that might be out there on a given subject, I could do something like transformative human resource management as a topic and run that search. Now, this is a very, very basic keyword. I've left it as all material types. I could filter that down and say I only wanted to type. I could also come up here to my search scope. I mentioned earlier we are including everything from us and from the Summit system. I could be really specific about that. I could say I really only want to look at articles. All of that's available to you. I'm going to leave this really broad, though, because what I want to focus on now is this set of filters along the left-hand side of my screen. So I could, instead of changing it on the front end, I could come down here and change my resource type after I've done my search. I would maybe do this if I wanted more than one type. So if I want a book, but I don't care if it's in print or digital, I could find ebooks here, and then I could also find, sometimes it hides, print books and apply those filters. And now I'm just looking at books, but it's both print books and digital copies. To turn off a filter once it's been turned on, I can come up here and I can click them off individually, or I can reset all of my filters here along the side. Pardon my ticketing system popping up there. All right, I can also filter. Oh, the joys of virtual reference. I can also filter by date When I see something like this back to 1,000, it tells me that there's been a little bit of a glitch in the system. But since I'm doing a business topic, I might only want the last 5 years or so. So we'll go 2016 to 2022, and we'll refine that down. And now I'm only seeing things within that date range. I can also filter by subject or by author creator, things like this. If you were looking for language materials, so let's say you're really trying to find something in French or in Spanish, we can do that filter here. That's particularly useful for our fiction materials, and some of our video collection is available in foreign languages, so this is available to you. And then things that are new to our system, although that's going to be a relatively arbitrary search. If you're doing a repeat search, so you're constantly checking to see what might be new, this may also be of use to you. So that's your filters and sort of a subject-based search. And again, Primo, it's a discovery tool. It throws a lot at you, but it's not a bad place to start for topic searches. It's just worth knowing that you're wading through quite a bit. So what if you know you don't want to wade through all of this? Well, we do have all of our databases accessible from the library homepage. So once again, just library.georgefox.edu. If I look just below my Primo search and I come down here to my menu bar, I have databases under the first menu. So I can click here, and I prefer to go to all databases A to Z. Go ahead and open that up. And then I can filter, I can look through this. If you just really wanted to scroll through the full list, they're all here. If I know the name of the database I want, I could navigate, so like Business Source Complete, I could say B and then scroll down to find that. Or I can search by subject. So again, if I was doing business research, I can say, let's go look at the business databases. We have set this up where your best bets, the ones that we think will be most useful for most questions, are up here in this bright yellow box. So for business, that's Business Source Complete, MarketLine, and Statista. And then we've also included things that might be still useful to you or might be useful for a very specific segment of researchers. And so those are here. They're always going to be linked with information about your librarian along with our contact information. And they're going to point you to our course guides. Which is the other thing I want to show you from the library homepage. So again, if we go back to the library, we're going to come along this menu, and instead of clicking on the databases menu, we can click on the research guides menu. So if we wanted to find business, we could click here. We'll let it do its scrolling thing. And then I can open the course guide that's very specific. And most of them are going to have, they'll either be broken down by the course designation, or they might have a Find Articles tab. But we're going to link in the resources that we think are most useful for that topic or that course, along usually with a little bit of further detail on how you might use that resource. We also have major subject guides. So business itself has got a subject guide that shows you a little bit about print and ebooks in that subject, the databases that we recommend, and then sometimes we'll also include things like reference sources or open web resources. So these are all places where you could find databases and do specific searching here at the library. This workshop is not going to go into detail on how to search specific databases. We have some materials on our website about tips and tricks for searching the databases, but a lot of that honestly will vary by database. So some of the functions that are available, for example, in Business Source Complete, which I love to demonstrate to folks, don't work the same way in other databases. And so what I would recommend to you, if you would like further tips and tricks, refresher, whatever that is, about a specific database or our databases in general in your subject, I would absolutely recommend that you reach out to your librarian. You can do that. There's two places you can find the Research Help tab. It's here in our Popular Services box on the library webpage, or it's under Help Research. And you can see all of our librarians and the subjects that we specialize in. Any one of us would love to walk you through those resources and show you some of the more specific functions and tricks for really efficiently searching in those databases. But for the purposes of today's workshop, we are going to go ahead and move on. Okay, so we've talked about Primo, we've talked about our databases. Let's talk a little bit about some of our systems and some of the issues that we see, especially with folks that aren't super familiar with library systems. So we have license agreements with our database vendors. Someone off the street trying to find a resource or a research article that's been published, for example, in something like Science Direct, generally speaking, does not have access to that full text of the title. We pay our vendor to make that available to university members. And we process that through a system called Easy Proxy. And at any time you open resources that are available through the library, you're passing through that Easy Proxy system. And ideally, our goal is that you never notice that you're going through it, or that if you do, it's just because you got asked to log in with your credentials. And this is great, right? This is the goal of good user service, is that you don't see all of the system functionality. However, especially if you're working on the Newburgh campus, you need to be aware that campus IP addresses, so if you're using a computer that's wired into our internet, or if you are on the Bruin networks, our IP addresses authenticate automatically. So you aren't going to be challenged to log in, and it's not going to create the pathway quite the same way. So it can make it seem like you're able to open content that's actually available through our vendor, our license agreements, by accessing it on the open web. So for example, if I go back over to the open web here and I open just a basic Google search, I have, let me grab this, I have the title of an article that's available. It's a librarianship article. I can pop it into a Google search. And here's the Science Direct option. Open it right up. Well, almost open it right up. Take a look at that. And I got here from regular Google, but the full contents are available to me. I can download it. It's absolutely available. If I attempted to do this on a computer that is not networked into the Newburgh campus system, it's not going to work. And we see that quite a bit when faculty send links to students, put them in their Canvas courses that they've gotten this way. We see that quite a bit when folks worked on campus and they said, oh, I found it this way. It was real easy. I can just remember to do that Google search later. Or they save the link they got that way and then they go home and they're working and the links don't work the same way anymore. So it's just worth knowing that that's the case and that you kind of want to be careful about that. General recommendation is always to start with the resources from the library homepage. So anything that we've linked out of our databases or out of our research guides or out of Primo, all of that is formatted to, by default, pass you through that Easy Proxy system and get you the correct access. So if you are going to save links, if you're going to share those links, or if you're trying to go back through and find things, we recommend that you always start on our webpage, just for ease of use. The other piece of that is persistent linking. There are a number of reasons why linked materials from our collections might stop working, including that on-campus, off-campus issue. So like you grabbed it on campus, but it didn't have the information for our systems. But more often even than that, it's the case of an expired session ID. Some of you may be familiar with this really gross EBSCO host page that you sometimes get. If a student said, oh, hey, here's the link to the article that I found, can you take a look at it? And you open that email and you click the link and you get this instead. It's a gross page. I hate finding it. And unfortunately, there's usually not enough information in the URL that generates this for us to figure out what it was supposed to be. If you see this, the only way to get back in is to go back through a correctly proxied pathway. So starting on the library webpage, usually getting back into the database, getting back to the actual article or the resource, whatever it was. The way to avoid this is to use permalinks or persistent links. And we've got some information about that for you in a few places. So if I go back to the library homepage and I say study and learn, and I say how to, here on the side, get a permanent link to articles. This is a little bit buried. We're working on making this a little bit more apparent. There's information here on how to add that proxy information to existing URLs, things that you found. A little bit of a generator here. So that would work in the case of something like this Science Direct. It does not actually have a persistent link option, but what I can do is grab this nice little short link and I can paste it after that proxy information And that now will work on campus or off campus to get me back to the correct article. If instead I was looking at, for example, let's go ahead and take a look at Business Source Complete because I've got that open. And let's do that same search we did earlier, transformative human resource management. Oh, we've got an extra capital in there. That's fun. All right, so if I'm in an EBSCO database and I open up a record for something that I'd like to send or save, if I look along the right-hand side, there's a permalink option in my tools. So click the link. There it is right there, and you'll see it's actually got, you might recognize that proxy prepend. You never, ever, ever want to grab the URL up here from an EBSCO or a ProQuest database. They include session IDs, and this is what expires. So this link, I could, for example, grab it and send it to somebody really quick. If I was chatting to somebody, if I was working in real time, that would be fine. However, if I save this in a document or I email it to somebody, about 2 hours from now, this link is no longer going to work. And we're going to get that really gross screen of death that just says, I don't know, that was EBSCO, maybe something. So to avoid that, always, always, always look for that permalink, grab it, and save that instead. If you're in Primo, so we can do, for example, let's do a subject search this time. So we'll do an advanced search. And let's do art. We've done a lot of business. So subject, impressionism. Excellent. If I open that up, I think we pointed this out earlier. I can come up here to this permalink, and this one's going to be nice and persistent for me. If I'm in the ebook itself, go ahead and open that up. My share link to book is also going to have the correct formatting. So this is a safe link to share as well. If you have questions about permalinks or how your preferred resources generate those or share those, you can definitely, again, that's something to reach out to your subject librarian about. We would love to chat with you about that. Okay, so last thing on the agenda for today, what about materials or systems that are not in our local collections? So we do have a good collection here. We have a lot of things available. We rely as well on our interlibrary loan system and on Summit requests. So we mentioned you can find Summit materials in Primo and request those. But let's go look at those two kinds of requests really quick. So let's say I wanted to find the title. Oh, I can grab this. The Jesuit Guide to Almost Everything. And that's a unique enough title. I'm just going to do a basic search for it. Remember that Primo searches our collections. It also searches the Summit collections. And so in this case, here's the book right here, print book. There's the correct cover. And I can already tell just from this record, it says check holdings, which either means we have it and it's checked out, or GFU does not have it, but it's in the Summit system. So I can click to open that record, and I can scroll down, and right here in my Get It section, I can see, oh, George Fox Library doesn't have a copy of this available. Please sign in for request options. If I wanted to double check really quickly, I can see this Show Summit Libraries, and yeah, it's at several places. So how do I actually place the Summit request? Well, come up here to this nice yellow bar, and we say sign in. And I say, I'm a current Fox employee. I'm going to click here. And it remembers that I signed in earlier. If I hadn't been signed in, it's just that standard SSO login. So the one that shows Stevens with the two girls walking up. Normal George Fox credentials. And then it drops me back in the record and it says, oh, hey, cool. You could do a Summit request for this. So I click the link. Thinks about it for a second. It's going to double check its system and make sure it's available. I get a green light. Yep, it's available for request. I can pick that up here at Murdoch, or I can have it shipped to my home address. That is typically only available for folks that live further away from campus. We do ask that if you're able to pick it up from from our building that you do. But if you need it delivered, we will certainly do that as well. So you would say Murdoch Library, and then you would click request, and it would confirm for you. I'm not actually going to place this request, although this looks like a delightful title. Submit materials come in 1 to 3 days. It's a 6-week loan rule, just like our print materials, with one renewal typically available, as long as nobody's requested it in the meantime. So typically for that, you're looking at a full 12 weeks to borrow that material. So, all right, so that's a submit request. Now let's say, for example, I couldn't find this when I wanted to look for it. I did my search, but this record wasn't here. I looked, man, none of what I'm looking for is here. In that case, then I want to do what's called an interlibrary loans request. So in order to generate that, there's 2 ways we can do that. We can attempt to find a record, which is usually my preferred way of doing it. So how would I do that? If I start back on the library homepage, instead of doing a Primo search, if I come down, so we had our advanced search, if I come over here, I've got a link to a system called WorldCat. WorldCat is short for World Catalog. It's basically the shared catalogs of the library systems that have agreed to participate in interlibrary loan services. And it lets me search across all sorts of libraries. It's a really awesome tool. It's occasionally a little bit of a clunky tool, so that's sort of worth knowing. And similar to Primo, it's got a lot of stuff in there. So usually what I try and do, I'm going to go ahead and put that title phrase in there. It's fairly unique. I'm also going to go ahead and ask it to only look in the title field. So trying to do a slightly more specific search in order to weed out some of the excess material that could come up in WorldCat. So I'm going to run that search, and it's going to think about it for a minute. Here we are. Now, worth keeping in mind for interlibrary loan requests and for Summit, if you are talking about the entirety of a work, so the whole book, the Jesuit Guide to Almost Everything, we do not loan, among other libraries, digital materials. So I can't loan a whole ebook. I can't loan a video online, things like that, stuff that's digitally native. I can do interlibrary loan requests for scans of articles that might be somewhere online. So that can be a little bit confusing to folks, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But as far as whole volumes go, we cannot borrow ebooks. And so if I look at this set of results, these are both e-audiobooks, and I'm not actually seeing the print come up in my first set of results. Really cool thing about this system, though, if I go ahead and say, let's open the record for the ebook. If I scroll down past the record, and again, you'll notice this looks a lot like what we have in Primo. It's the same sort of standard system. I can find the other editions and formats, and in this case, I've got several. There's a print book. WorldCat's also going to tell me how many libraries are attached to each edition. And so what I usually do with this is I'm looking for something like this that's got a whole bunch of libraries attached to it. So to open that, I go ahead and I click on the title. I've got the new record open. It's available at all of those different libraries. And now I've got this nice gold request item via ILL. Once again, that button, if you're not already logged into the SSO, is going to challenge you to log in with your George Fox credentials, and then it's going to drop you here on this page. And this is why I like starting with the record, because this form is already largely filled out. The only thing I have to tell it is, where do I want to pick it up at? So for me, it would be the Murdoch Library. And then, do I care about this edition versus other editions? So if you specifically need a third edition of a title, you might need to tell us, yeah, I need this one. Sometimes it doesn't really matter, so I will accept other editions. In this case, I don't really think there are other editions. You can also give us further details if you have it. I use the notes field here primarily if I'm working with someone who needs material that is available in multiple languages. So if you're working in classical material and it's available in French and there's a translation in English, but you really need the original French text, it can be worth it, even with the edition information, it can be worth it to note here, I really need the French version of this text. Or like, I don't care about the edition, I've said that, but it has to be French. That's what that can be used for. You don't actually have to fill out anything else. You can just click submit, and you'll get an email from our interlibrary loan office once that's available to you. If you don't want to take the trouble to find the record, you don't have time to deal with that, you've got the information for the title already available to you. What you can do instead is, again, starting from the library homepage, instead of going to WorldCat, you can just come right down here to the interlibrary loan system, open it up directly, and you can make your request. So for a full item, it would be this second option here, and that form's going to look really familiar. Fill that out with as much information as you can give us. This is also viable if you are looking for an article or just the chapter out of a print book. We can do a scan request for those. Those come through digitally. Interlibrary loan materials, we say give us 1 to 2 weeks on delivery for the full print volume of something. Scan requests, we're looking at more like 1 to 7 days. And a lot of those really do turn around within about 24 hours. And so that would be this form instead, so an article or a chapter request. And it's the same system. You just fill out the form with as much information as you can give us and click submit, and you'll get an email once it's available to you. If you have questions about interlibrary loan source or resources or our policies around that, you can find them on our webpage under our Find, Borrow, Renew. Interlibrary loan and summit is here. Our borrowing limits and policies are also just in this section, so this is available to you as well. All right. The last thing to show you, and one of my favorite things to show folks, is sort of a cheat. So I've just spent the last half hour or so telling you, please use our system, start at the library homepage. But I do have a trick. If you really, really prefer Google Scholar, you can set it up to connect to the library systems. So if I do that, let's go ahead and open a fresh tab, starting to collect them today. And we'll go to Google Scholar. So that's just scholar.google.com. All right. And this does change based on your profile. So right now I'm logged in to my George Fox email account. If that's where you're primarily working, that's great. If you have a personal account as well, it's just worth knowing that if you set this up on one, it doesn't transfer to the other. You'll have to set it up on whatever account you're working in. So how do I connect? If I come over here on the upper left, there is a hamburger menu, these 3 lines, and I'm going to come all the way down to settings. When that opens, again, in the upper left, I've got a set of menu items. I'm looking for library links. It's the 3rd option. And mine is currently turned on, so I'm actually going to uncheck that and save. Oops, go back in, pardon me. I then type George Fox, and that's actually enough to pull us up. There it is, George Fox University. Find it at George Fox U. Make sure that's checked, and then click Save. What that does, if I go back, we've done a lot of business. Let's do an art topic. Let's just do Impressionism. Run a really, really big search. Many of these are going to be open source, but here is an article from Modern Fiction Studies in 1982. It creates these Find It at George Fox University links for me. So if I click on that, this will look very familiar because it's designed to look like Primo when it loads. There we go. And now it's telling me, hey, there's the database that it's open through. Go ahead and click to open that up. And it pops you through to the full text. There we are, PDF full text out of the EBSCO database. I love Google Scholar. It searches slightly differently than Primo. What I usually actually recommend if you're using something like Scholar is search in Primo and search in Scholar, because they index things a little bit differently, and sometimes the exact same search terms will turn up slightly different results. But definitely go ahead and consider connecting your Scholar in to our library systems. And of course, we're always encouraging folks to use open access resources, things like that, and your librarian can tell you about what might be available in your field if you're not already aware. So that is it for today's presentation. If you have further questions, and I kind of hope you do, about using library systems, about anything that I've covered here today ever so briefly, or about specific tools and tricks and ways to help your research and your field be more efficient, ways to use the library systems to your advantage instead of having to fight them, or if you're experiencing any sort of issues with our system, stuff isn't opening for you, stuff doesn't appear to be where you think it should be, or you're turned around for any reason, please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find us on that research help page. You can make an appointment with us. You can also, honestly, please just email us directly or give us a phone call, drop into our offices. Andrea Abernathy, Jenny Bruxford, and I are all located on the Newburgh campus. Robin Ashford is based out of the Portland Center. And again, we would love to email with you, set up a time for a meeting or an appointment, or to talk to you over the phone. You can also send questions to the research help email or to our virtual reference desk. We've got an Ask Us a Question form that is monitored throughout the week. So I'm not always available directly for all of my departments. I might be in a meeting. I might be putting on a workshop. But we as a team of librarians monitor what comes in here. So if you have a quick question or something that needs a faster response, sometimes this is a better option for you. Regardless, we do hope that you will reach out and let us know how we can support you in your scholarship and your instruction.